Winning Blueprint presents.
In the Lab Room. Pittsburgh Steelers.
I was in the store the other day and I was listening to this man talk. And I could tell by the sound of his voice he was talking football. And that caught my ear immediately. Being a football fan, a guy that loves to talk football, I was listening very attentively. And it didn't take me long to figure out who he was talking about. He was talking about everyone was calling them old and how they couldn't get it done anymore. And that wasn't the reason why they weren't winning. I knew he was talking about the Steelers. And you can hear, you can see, you can smell a Steelers fan a mile away. They're very passionate, sometimes borderline obnoxious. I love them. I absolutely love Steelers fans because they come from everywhere. They come out of the woodworks. They let you know they're loud and they're proud. I'm a Steelers fan. It's all over their truck or their car. And they're loud and they're talking about it. They have on hats and jackets. They let you know, hey, I'm a Steelers fan. And I can appreciate that. Nothing says I'm a Steelers fan than more apparel than you can really stand. You see it all the time. God forbid they win a Super Bowl. You'll see more Steelers fans come out of the woodworks than children of the corn. I mean, they're coming from every direction. You turn, there's a flag flying on a car, blowing in the wind. Hey, I was just behind this car yesterday. None of this stuff was on this car yesterday. That's what the Steelers can do to people, to fans. And so the Steelers have a passionate fan base. And he was going on and on about how the Steelers were this and they were that and why they weren't able to get it done this season. And I listened. I didn't say a word. Because even if I tried to tell him why the Steelers didn't get it done, he wasn't going to listen. Because he had already said and had it figured out in his mind. It was already made up. This is why the Steelers didn't get it done this year. And so there was no need for me to interject and try to inform him on why the Steelers didn't get it done. To each its own. So we find ourselves here in the lab room on the lab follow-up, Pittsburgh Steelers edition. They're the 17th pick in the draft. And so we'll be talking Pittsburgh Steelers football today on this segment. Welcome. So what an interesting season, to say the least, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. When I did the lab reports on the Steelers before the season started, I made mention of the Steelers jinx. And I already said that I wasn't one that was big on jinxes, superstition, and all of those things. I was when I was a kid. But I realized quickly, much like wrestling, it's not real. And so I kind of said, hey, don't believe in them. Except when they keep happening over and over and over again. One time, it's luck. 2 times, it's a trend. 3 times, it's a jinx. Now, I'm a believer in the Steelers jinx, which says that the Pittsburgh Steelers don't make the postseason every 3 seasons. You couldn't get me to believe that before the season started. I was like, man, whatever, man. Much like the Madden curse, it's all in the eye of the beholder. If you think it works, if you think that the curse is real, then you're going to find reasons to believe it. You're going to find evidence that supports your case or your theory. Same with the Steelers jinx. But you can't ignore facts. It's one thing to look at the Madden curse and say, hey, guys have gotten hurt every season, which they haven't. Guys haven't gotten hurt every season that they've been on the cover. Now, it's happened more times than not, but it hasn't happened every year, so you can't say that that's a definite. But with this Steelers jinx, since 2000, it's real. The Steelers didn't make the playoffs in 2003. They didn't make it in 2006. They didn't make it in 2009. They didn't make it in 2012. There's some merit to that. And I talked about it early in the season, and then I dropped it because I said, you know what? These are the Steelers. And if anyone can beat a jinx, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I said, you know what? Forget I even brought that up. Steelers fans, don't pay me any mind. Don't pay me any attention. And then the Steelers started the season 2-3, and I said, I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. I'm like, this is eerie. This feels really freaky right now. Then the Steelers said, hey, don't worry. There's no jinx. And they won 4 in a row. And they were 6-3. And I said, that's more like it. Those are the Steelers that I've come to know, and many of you have come to know and love. And so I dismissed it. No way they're missing the playoffs. They're 6-3. They're right there after starting slow. They're right there close, sniffing around the top of their division. They're going to fight the Ravens tooth and nail, as they always do, for the right to be called AFC North champions, and they're going to make the postseason. What does that jinx know? And then, after winning that 4th consecutive game, it came at a cost. They lost Ben Roethlisberger on Monday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs in a game that they barely won. They tried to lose. Luckily enough for the Steelers, Kansas City wanted to lose that game more than they did. And so Kansas City lost it. But they lost Ben Roethlisberger in the process. And the season just took a nosedive from that point on. Even when Roethlisberger was able to come back, he wasn't the same Ben Roethlisberger. Neither was this team. They lost their final 5 out of 7 games, finished the season 8-8, and wouldn't you know it, that curse is alive and kicking and well. The curse exists. It is real. That jinx is legit. And until the Steelers break it, I'm a believer. Till I saw its face, I wasn't a believer. But I saw his face. Now I'm a believer. I'm a believer. I'll tell you what, though. This 2012 season was very awkward for the Steelers. It just, so many things were un-Steelers-like in this season. -10 in the turnover differential. When's the last time the Steelers were minus anything in the turnover differential? Their turnover ratio is usually plus 15, plus 20, plus 7. -10? Really? Yeah. -10 gets you 8-8, and most times, -10 gets you 5-11. But these are the Steelers we're talking about. This isn't your normal franchise. These are the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so, even though they were -10 in the turnover ratio, they still managed to get to 500. Most teams can't lay claim to that. You find a way to give it up 10 more times than you get it. Normally, you're a 5-11, 4-12, 6-10 football team. But not the Steelers. They're unlike most NFL franchises. They go about it a different way. And really, it's surprising to see them struggle the way they did this season because they lost to some really bad teams, did the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, this season was awkward. You asked me why the Steelers lost, and the guy in the store was yelling, "We're not old." Yes, you are old. But it's okay that you're old. It wasn't the reason you lost. And yeah, You are old. For any Steelers fan out there that says, no, we're not old. We have a lot of young talent. We have a lot of young players. You're old, okay? 9 of your key contributors are 30 years old or older. If you want me to, I can name them. Okay, I'll just name them because a lot of you Steelers fans are really bullheaded and you don't believe me. So there's Heath Miller, Troy Polamalu, James Harrison, Ryan Clark, Larry Foote, Ben Roethlisberger, Ike Taylor, and Casey Hampton, and there's someone else. That's 8 right there. There's someone else I'm missing, but just know there's a lot of Steelers that are 30 years of age or older. Not sure if I named Troy Polamalu or not. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, this is an old team. A lot of their best players are past their prime. When I say that, I mean James Harrison can't stay healthy anymore. He only got you 6 sacks this season. Lamar Whitley couldn't stay healthy. Only got you 4 sacks. Very uncharacteristic of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're a team that puts pressure on the opposing quarterback, forces them into mistakes, takes advantage of those mistakes, turns them into points. Part of the reason why the Steelers were -10 in the turnover ratio, because they couldn't get sacks. They couldn't generate pressure. They couldn't force the issue, push the envelope. Couldn't do that this season because they weren't generating enough pass rush. They weren't forcing turnovers. Troy Polamalu was hurt basically all season long. One of your biggest playmakers was not in the lineup. He's getting up there in age. Injuries don't heal as quick as they used to. Body doesn't respond to straining a calf muscle or straining an MCL or getting turf toe. It doesn't respond the same way it used to 6 years ago, when you could put some ice on it, get a little bit of stem treatment, and be back the following week. Doesn't work that way anymore. Now you got to sit out 8, 9 games just to get back, just to tweak it again and miss another 4 games. Steelers are old, but the Steelers, again, aren't like most teams. They don't rebuild in Pittsburgh. They reload in Pittsburgh. And they do it the right way. So instead of them just getting old overnight, and you look up and you say, man, the Steelers are old and they're bad. See, the Steelers are old, but they're still productive guys on this roster. So you can be old. It's called being a seasoned veteran. That's what the Steelers have. Seasoned veterans. They're not old. They're seasoned veterans. Guys that have been in this league, know all the tricks of the trade, can get it done. See, when you're old, that means you can't play anymore. You can't help your football team anymore. You need to hang it up. That's not what the Steelers have going on. They just have a lot of seasoned veterans. That's fine. You have to mix in the young guys as well, and that's what the Steelers do better than probably any team in the National Football League. It's called depth, and you have to have it to reload. You don't have depth, you can't reload. You have to rebuild. You have to tear it down and start all over. You have to start anew. The Steelers don't ever have to do that because they never let it get to the point where it's dilapidated, it's decrepit, and they have to start it all over again. They have to blow it up, demolish it, and start from the ground up. They never let it get to that point. They start putting guys in one by one. They work in a different nose tackle. They know Casey Hampton is on his last legs. So they start working in guys like McClendon, so that they know when Casey Hampton can't do it anymore, McClendon can step in and it's a seamless transition. Same thing at linebacker. They know that James Harrison and Larry Foote and all these guys are getting up there in age. So they start slipping in guys like Jason Worrells. So when James Harrison goes down with an injury or Larry Foote can't do it anymore, Jason Worrells just slides in, seamless transition, you don't even notice. That's what the Steelers do. Brett Kiesel, Aaron Smith. Remember Aaron Smith hung it up last year? Brett Kiesel is getting up there in age. I don't know if I named him. He's 32 years old. He's getting up there in age. They just start sliding in guys like Ziggy Hood. You see him, Then you don't. Then you see Ziggy Hood in again on third down, and you're like, hey, they're putting in Ziggy Hood a lot more. They just slide guys in, make the transition seamless. So when Brett Kiesel decides I can't do this anymore, Aaron Smith decides I'm going to hang it up, you just slide the next guy in, and there's no drop off because he's already been playing. That's what the Steelers do. That's what they do. And so the one position that they're not able to do that at, because they just don't have enough veteran players to really kind of flip-flop them in back and forth with, is corner. And I thought the Steelers were baptized out there at the cornerback position. A lot of young guys out at the corner positions for the Steelers. And they had to learn with on-the-job training. Baptism by fire. They just got thrown in the fire, thrown in the mix and said, hey, you got to learn, and you got to learn fast. Ike Taylor went down with an injury. Guys had to step up. A lot of young corners for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they paid for it. But that's not the reason the Steelers weren't effective in 2012. No, that's not the reason. That wasn't the reason. Because the Steelers were number one in yardage allowed defensively. So they still were stopping teams from stockpiling a lot of yards. And they were sixth in the National Football League in points allowed. So this defense was still getting it done. With all the changes, all the guys missing, Palomalu not playing, a lot of the corners switching in and out, a lot of new faces in that secondary. Doesn't matter. The Steelers still got it done defensively. Now, they didn't force as many turnovers as they have in the past. But, again, that's not the underlying issue here. The reason the Steelers were an average 8-8 ball club in 2012 was because of the turnovers. That minus 10 not only speaks volumes as to how loose they were with the football. It's not how many turnovers they had. And yes, they had a lot of them in 2012. It was when they occurred. The Steelers lost to some bad teams this season. You lose to the Titans. That's a bad football team. You should have beat them. Ben Roethlisberger throws a late interception in that game, leads to the Titans winning that football game. You lose to the Raiders. That's a bad football team. Antonio Brown fumbles at the most inopportune time in that game. Steelers are really looking to put the clamps down on the Raiders. Antonio Brown coughs it up. Raiders recover. The game is never the same after that. Raiders take control, win that football game with a late Sebastian Janikowski field goal. You look at the Dallas game. Steelers had control of that game. Antonio Brown fumbles on a punt return where he breaks a big one. Gets stripped. Cowboys recover. The game is never the same. The Steelers never recover. They lose that football game after Ben Roethlisberger throws an egregious interception that cost you that football game. You look at the Browns game. That's a bad Cleveland Browns team. They're getting better. Don't sleep on the Browns, Steelers. Don't you do it. But you should be able to beat the Cleveland Browns. Instead, you turn it over something like 6 or 7 times. What an abomination that game was. You lose to the San Diego Chargers. They're a bad football team, are the Chargers. I don't care that they went 7-9. That's a bad football team. And you threw up all over yourself against the Chargers at home. No excuse. I mean, you threw the ball off of teammates, let them recover it in the end zone. You did everything in your power to give the Chargers that football game. You were blown out at home, inexcusably, to the San Diego Chargers. Bad loss. That's what this team did this season. Lost games to bad teams in very bad fashion. Turning the football over. And that was the undoing of this team in 2012. Bad turnovers to bad teams at bad times in the game. You can't do it. You can't turn the football over, number one. You can't turn it over in the most inopportune times. That's number 2. You can't turn it over in abundance of times. That's number 3. The Steelers did all of them. That's why they were 8-8 in the 2012 season. Simple as that. You don't have to look any further than that. You don't have to probe any deeper than that. They had running back issues. Didn't matter. They still were getting it done. They just turned the football over way too much. At the wrong times. End of discussion. That Cincinnati game put a perfect period on your season. That's the way your season should have ended. Because you turned it over all season long at the worst, most inopportune times. And what do? Ben Roethlisberger supplies the Cincinnati Bengals with their only touchdown of the day, a pick six via Leon Hall, an egregious throw in your own territory that Leon Hall makes a great play on, picks it off, takes it to the house. Then, to top it off, and again, a perfect exclamation point for your season, he throws a pick right before the end of regulation that sets up Cincinnati for the game-winning field goal to beat you at home and send them to the playoffs, send you home for the rest of the season. Only fitting that your season end that way because you had a season full of turnovers at the wrong times, to the wrong teams, too many times. Simple as that. And you say what you want about this offense and Todd Haley and him coming in. Ben Roethlisberger, to me, was his sharpest this season. The ball came out of his hand quick, and I think Todd Haley really put emphasis on that. Get it out quick. 3-step drop, get it out. Ben Roethlisberger, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, over 3,200 yards passing. Keep in mind, he missed about 3 or 4 games this season. He would have been well over 4,000 yards, and he didn't even break double-digit interceptions. I mean, this was a great season for Ben Roethlisberger. Thought he was very efficient this season. But the turnovers. He only had 8 interceptions, but I tell you what, 3 or 4 of those things, were they costly. And that's what I've been talking about. When these turnovers occur, not only the fact that you had a lot of them and you didn't get a lot back defensively, but when they occur. And the Steelers had too many turnovers at the most crucial junctures of games that helped them lose. So if you're the Steelers, it's still business as usual. Nothing changes because you didn't make the postseason. No need to jump off of a cliff and try to reinvent the wheel. You're the Steelers. You don't rebuild, you reload. And so you just go back to the drawing board, start over again. And if you're the Steelers this year in the draft, the Chris Rainey experiment didn't work. You've cut ties with him. He can't behave himself off the field, and so you've cut ties with him. Okay. You need speed in that backfield, though. Let's not ignore the fact that your running backs are all the same guy. They're all bruisers. They're all slow. They're all power backs. Let's not fool ourselves into thinking that you have a change of pace back. Right now, you don't have that guy on your roster. Isaac Redman, Jonathan Dwyer, Rashad Mendenhall, they're all one and the same. They all do the same thing. They're all guys that can pound it up the middle. There are 3 yards in a cloud of dust backfield. All of them. All of them do the same thing. Jonathan Dwyer, I think, has a little bit more upside than the rest of that group, but Isaac Redman is a jack of all trades. They all do something different, but none of them does speed, and that's what you need in your backfield. They all do different things. Rashad Mendenhall probably is the purest running back of the group. Isaac Redman is a jack of all trades. He catches it out of the backfield. He's a great pass protector, and he can run the football. And then Jonathan Dwyer is a powerful back, hard to bring down. He has very nimble feet for his size. He can get it done. They all bring something to the table different than the other, except for one thing: speed. None of them have it. Speed! That's something you can't teach. Neither of those guys have it. You need to infuse your backfield with some speed. Now you have it out wide. There's no secret. Mike Wallace, who was never on the same page as this offense because he showed up late because he tried to hold out. And so he was never on the same page with this offense. He was never in tune. Antonio Brown, he's a big play threat for you in the return game at receiver, has to stop fumbling the football. He had just as many costly turnovers as Big Ben did this season. Way too many for a guy that you rely on so heavily. He has to stop turning the ball over. Secure it. He's a dynamic player. I love Antonio Brown, but he can't turn the football over. It costs your team when you turn it over. And he did that way too many times in 2012. At the moments that you could least afford to turn the football over. So he's got to be better in 2013. But make no mistake about it. If you're the Steelers, you continue to improve this offensive line. You got guys that were injured. David DeCastro barely played this season. He's your guard of the future on the left side. You drafted offensive line in several different positions. It's starting to become a younger offensive line. You can still use a right tackle. So you could use another offensive lineman. The Steelers, it seems like every season, the Steelers go through offensive linemen like babies go through wipes every day. The Steelers go through offensive linemen like wipes, like diaper wipes. Every season. Never fails. The Steelers are almost all but assured and guaranteed to use 9 to 11 offensive linemen per season. Unbelievable how many Steeler linemen, offensive linemen, get hurt a season. And how many guys they got to platoon and get off the street to come in and play offensive line for the Steelers. Remarkable that this offense is able to function with all the injuries to the offensive line every season. Amazing. But if you're the Steelers, keep drafting offensive linemen. You need to. You could use another safety. You got to start drafting for the future. Palomalu was hurt all season long. How long does he have left? How much does he have left in the tank? You have to keep asking yourself that. Go ahead and draft a safety to be the heir apparent there. Ike Taylor's getting up there in age. I think you have a lot of corners. Are they any good? You need to find that out. If not, draft another corner. It never hurts to keep drafting more of what you already have. Because someone has to pan out eventually, right? At least that's the conventional thinking. That's conventional wisdom. That if you keep hammering away at it, at some point, you'll have a breakthrough. And so, I don't know if any of those corners are really good. The Cortez Allens, the Browns, the Josh Victorians, I don't know if they're any good. You don't know if they're any good. I'm not sure if the Steelers know if they're any good right now. And so, wouldn't hurt to draft another one of those guys and see, hey, throw him in the mix, see what he can do. One of these guys is bound to pan out. So, I'm telling you, offensive line in the draft. I'm telling you, dynamic, game-changing, speed running back in the draft. I'm telling you, safety in the draft. Because both of your safeties are getting up there in age. Both of your main safeties, Ryan Clark, Troy Polamalu, up over the age of 30. So you need to be looking for the safeties of the future. So safety, offensive line, running back. You could use another corner. Why not? Receiver. You had to go and get Plaxico Burress off of the street. You need receiver help. And not because your receivers aren't getting it done. Look, Antonio Brown is a beast. Mike Wallace, when his head is in the game, he's a monster. You need a wide body, big threat receiver. You need a 6'4", 6'5" guy that can get it done in the red zone, a big target that you can throw the football to. That's what Plaxico Burress' role was supposed to be when he came back. Just a guy that we can toss it up to in the red zone. Heath Miller right now is your red zone target. But Heath Miller doesn't get any separation. If it's not play action faking, he's wide open, then it's a stick throw. And Ben has to stick it in there and Heath has to take a shot, catch it, and hold on to it. You guys want to get easier touchdowns in the red zone. Have a big target that Ben can just loft it up to and they go up and make a play on the football. You could use one of those. You also could use an athletic tight end. Heath Miller is getting up there in age. He's still very productive, ultra productive. But remember, he ended his season with an ACL injury. So who knows if he'll ever be the same. He's getting up there in age again. You don't recover from these injuries the way you would have, say, 6 years ago when you were a young pup. He's getting up there in age and now you tear an ACL. Tough to come back from that this late in your career. So you could use another tight end as well. You drafted Paulson, but he's not a burner. He's not athletic. He's another blocking tight end in a long list of blocking tight ends for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Heath Miller is a blocking tight end that can catch the football really well. Matt Spaeth was a blocking tight end that could catch the football really well. That's what Paulson is. You need an athletic tight end. Someone that can stretch the field. Give Ben Roethlisberger another target over the middle of the field. So there's a lot of areas that you could address if you're the Steelers. You could go outside linebacker. You need some more guys that can get after the quarterback. James Harrison's time has come, and it's starting to pass. He's no longer the guy that can get you 12 to 15 sacks a season. You need to start looking for other guys that can have an impact. So there's plenty of areas of need for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Offensive line, cornerback, safety, running back, outside linebacker. There's plenty of areas you could go. Tight end. You could even ask and enlist for the services of a new kicker if you like. I mean, there's plenty of things you could do in the draft, in free agency, and I think the Steelers need to be busy in both. This isn't the time for the Steelers to pull that, hey, we're the Steelers card out. Time for you to start realizing that there are some deficiencies on this team, some areas of weakness that you can be better at. Address them, move forward. I expect the Steelers to be back in the playoffs next year. I expect them to be a good football team. The question that everyone's asking now is, do you need to draft another quarterback? Is it time for you to draft another quarterback and start grooming him behind Ben? Ben continuously gets injured, gets concussions. Ben's 30, but it's an old 30 because he's put a lot of wear and tear on his body. In football years, Ben's like 35 years old. And so do you need to start looking for another young quarterback? Because as you saw this season, Charlie Batch and Byron Leftwich, two more dinosaurs, not going to get it done for you. They were the reason why you weren't able to make it to the postseason. Well, at least part of the reason. They weren't the sole reason, but they didn't help you out. In your time of need, when you needed a backup to step in and get you through a 3-4 game stretch, they weren't able to do it. And so you need a young guy behind Ben Roethlisberger. In the case that he goes down, there's someone that can step in and help right the ship until he returns. And possibly be able to take over for Ben when he can no longer be the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. You need to start really making preparations for the future if you're the Steelers. I think this is the season, this is the draft, this is the free agency season where you need to start making preparations for the future. Because Clark, Polamalu, Harrison, Roethlisberger, Miller, they're all getting up there in age. And you need to start having guys waiting in the wings to step in when these guys can no longer play at a high level for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's going to do it for this installment of the Lab Follow-Up Pittsburgh Steelers edition. They were the 17th pick in the draft. Join me tomorrow when we come back on this very program and talk about the 18th team to select in the 2013 draft, the Dallas Cowboys. That should be a lot of fun. A lot of changes have already been made in Big D. We'll talk about them tomorrow here on this very program. So until then, have a good one. See you tomorrow when we're talking Dallas Cowboys football.
Pittsburgh Steelers in the Lab Room.